It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce a friend and colleague, Dr. Vivienne Pierce McDaniel, who joins us from Virginia today to give her presentation. And let me give you a little bit of an overview of who our speaker is and what she's about. Originally, Dr. Pierce McDaniel earned her associate in applied science and nursing from Thomas Nelson Community College in Hampton, Virginia. She climbed the academic ladder to reach her DNP, but along the way, she got her master's and bachelor's degree from American Sentinel University with a focus in nursing management and organizational leadership, followed by a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree from Walden University. She is currently an assistant professor of nursing as adjunct at Aspen University, where she teaches DNP courses and serves as a chair and mentor to DNP students. In addition, Dr. Pierce McDaniel, I just lost my place, is also an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion. She is a consultant for James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and American Sentinel University's Sentinel U in Aurora, Colorado. She is also the director of long-term care workforce development at Quality Assured Healthcare and Education Services. As a subject matter in healthcare policy, she can often be found in Congress or at her state's General Assembly advocating for mental health concerns, the geriatric population, and any interests that impact nursing practices. She is also a subject matter expert in diverse health populations. Dr. Pierce McDaniel serves on the board of the Sigma Chi Alpha at Large chapter and on the Sigma Region 3 Member Engagement Committee. In her state of Virginia, she serves on the Nurses Foundation Board of Trustees as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Ambassador and as the chair of the Virginia Nurses Association Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. Dr. Pierce McDaniel is the chair of student outreach for the Central Virginia chapter of the Virginia Nurses Association and is also a member of the American Association of Colleges of Nursing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group and is the vice president of the Central Virginia chapter of the National Black Nurses Association. Dr. McDaniel is honored to be a member of the Virginia Governor's Long-Term Care COVID-19 Task Force and is the chair of the Virginia Long-Term Care Wellness Advisory Committee Education and Training Work Group. She also actively serves on the board of the Wilson Initiative for the Health and Social Equity. I have no idea what she does in her free time, if she ever has any. This is one busy lady, so we are really fortunate to have her with us today. And so I'm going to turn over to Dr. Vivienne to bring up her slides, and we'll go over the disclosures real quickly and the instructions and the course expectations, and then she will launch into her presentation. So as we say in the beginning of every program that we put on, we do have to mention the criteria for completion, which in this case you need to attend. Vivienne, if you'll, there you go. If you will attend at least 90% of this educational activity. No one on the planning or implementation of this educational activity has any disclosures or conflicts of interest to announce. For those who qualify, you will receive 1 hour of continuing education credit. The way it works is attendance is taken today. You will be emailed an electronic survey to complete tomorrow. And then once you complete your evaluation of the activity, you will then be directed to a link that you can download your CE certificate. So with all of that being said, Dr. Vivienne, you are on. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm having a problem here with my slides. They're advancing on their own. And so please bear with me. And thank you for that warm introduction, Dr. Novak. So today I am going to talk to you about some topics on cultural competence and cultural humility. And my main focus is on cultural humility. And we will also discuss cultural sensitive language in gerontology and your role as nurses in health equity, diversity, and inclusivity. So I would like to share with you a few theories that I have used over the course of being in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And but my favorite cultural competence theorist is Madeline Leininger. I would also like to caution you that there has been an increasing concern about some of the textbooks that we are using now in nursing programs. So I would love it if you would just be cognizant of the stereotypes included in some of the literature. So cultural competence is the ability to understand, communicate with, and effectively interact with people. See, it's advancing. I'm so sorry. I apologize. And I can't figure out what to do so that it doesn't advance.
Do you want me to bring up my slides of this and then you just tell me
Uh,
when to forward, or?
well, it's hard because I actually inserted a couple of slides that I would like for them to see. So let me see if I can just fix this and or I'll just monitor it and make sure that it doesn't advance. So achieving cultural competence is a process and it's not an end point. And I just want to bring to your attention the National Institute of Health's definition for cultural humility. It's a lifelong process of self-reflection and self-critique. Cultural competence does not incorporate self-awareness, since the goal is to learn about the other person's culture rather than reflecting on the background. So with cultural humility, it moves us between several cultures and it allows you to put yourself into those cultures to learn the cultures of others. And you also will learn about your own values and beliefs. And it is an ongoing process, and you always want to self-reflect. I wanted to bring to your attention the 5 R's of humility. They were originally developed as a tool to educate physicians to work with the increasing cultural, racial, and ethnically diverse population in the United States. But it is useful in all types of service, all areas of service. And the 5 R's: reflection, respect, regard, relevance, and resiliency, they will help you to acknowledge implicit biases with a mindful and compassionate response. And promotion of the 5 R's is based in cultural humility, principles that are acknowledge that no one will ever be an expert on individuals in any social or cultural group, not even your own. So the next slide, I wanted you to listen to this video on implicit bias. Now, with this laptop that I'm using, it may not come up. So if you could, oh, here we go. All right. Up, but it's not playing. Can you hear it?
Vivienne, it might be that the audio button,
Okay, wait
um,
one
we're,
second.
we're not hearing it, but if you may need to stop sharing for a moment and go and then click on share screen again. And on the lower left, there are two little boxes that say share audio.
Can you hear it? Oh, I'm so sorry. Stop sharing, is what you're
Stop
saying?
sharing.
Okay.
And then go ahead and click on the button that says share screen.
Can, I clicked on share sound. Should I try it again?
And hopefully that'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
You're not biased, right?
Yay.
Yay, I'm so
This
sorry.
free online test might tell you otherwise. The Implicit Association Test, or IAT, can reveal racial and gender biases you might not even know you have. Here's how it works. The test asks you to rapidly group a series of images and words. For instance, in one section of the race IAT, you press a certain key whenever you see a white face or a positive word. You press another key if it's a black face or a negative word. And you have to react as fast as you can. In another section, the associations are reversed. White faces go with negative words, while black faces are grouped with positive words. It turns out that 70% of test takers, white and non-white, respond more slowly when grouping black faces with positive words. The test calls this an automatic preference for white people. Other IAT tests on subjects like gender and disability have also found pervasive automatic associations that mirror social stereotypes. Your IAT results may well surprise you. Indeed, most test takers would answer on a questionnaire that white and black people are equal, and men and women should have equal pay. And many of them honestly think so. We're not talking about extremists here, but people like you and me. So what might the IAT reveal about us?
We may grow in our life to recognize that we don't endorse a particular stereotype about a group, but that doesn't mean that we lose that memory for what the culture has taught us the stereotype to be. This is a spoiler alert, but you may know that Santa Claus is not real, but that doesn't prevent you from having a full narrative about who that person is and looks like and what he does. And stereotypes are often the same way. By function of simply seeing someone from the group, one of the things we do unconsciously and automatically is pull out of memory all the information we have about the group.
And these memories shape what we perceive as reality without us realizing it. Implicit biases can be hidden in our everyday actions. When we open our inboxes and see a lot of emails, whose message do we end up replying to? Do we laugh when we hear a racist or sexist joke? When we vote, what makes us think one candidate is more competent? Research shows implicit biases can cause major inequalities on a collective scale. So, what can we do to reduce our implicit biases? First, here's some bad news.
There's widespread belief that implicit biases are so stable that they are virtually totally unchangeable. There's a lot of experiments done trying to change implicit biases. We find what I call elastic changes, which means you can get a change that you can measure 15 minutes later, but come back the next day and see if it's changed. No, it's back to what it was before.
And even if we do change implicit bias, we have some other research suggesting that its link to any individual behavior is very weak. These are kind of associations that presumably are built up over a lifetime of experience.
But still, we want to control our biases and act more fairly. Professor Greenwald has worked with Washington state judges to address implicit biases in court, and he says intentionally resisting these biases could actually backfire.
If you make the attempt to control implicit bias in real time. What you can say is have a higher bar for making a particular judgment. You actually don't know if you're operating more validly or accurately when you just sort of consciously impose a bias in the reverse direction.
If conscious control might not work, should we just be resigned to our implicit biases and do nothing? Of course not.
Your best bet is to focus on changing procedures and practices that are closely aligned with the issue that you're worried about, so that the opportunity to act on your implicit bias never pops up.
The first step is to give yourself an audit.
I really encourage what I call counting, looking at the data, seeing if disparities are occurring. And you can only check this by keeping track of it over time.
Once we identify situations prone to producing bias, we can take steps to blind decision makers to the identity of those affected by their decisions. In situations like job interviews, where decision makers will learn about demographic information, Professor Lai recommends another strategy.
When we don't pre-commit ourselves to decision-making criteria, we're more likely to act in line with potentially our implicit biases. So what you might want to do is instead give yourself the exercise ahead of time to figure out what are the criteria that are actually important rather than kind of deciding after the fact.
These are things we can all do. We can count our decisions in our professional and private lives and take action to limit the influence of bias. One thing is clear: merely wanting to change is not enough.
Okay, so as you can see, there are several implicit bias trainings that you can take, and I've included the website link here if you are interested in that. And just keep in mind that an unconscious biases can lead to bullying, feeling excluded, discrimination, and it can cause less productivity and engagement in your team. It also impacts recruitment decisions, employee development, and it impairs diversity and negatively affects staff retention rates. When you, well, I'll just talk to you a little bit about how it resides deep in the subconscious. These biases are different from known biases that individuals may choose to conceal for the purposes of social or political correctness. So just keep in mind about that. And then there is another, and well, it looks like it's going to work. I want you to look and see if you can see the microaggressions in this video. Procter and Gamble did an amazing job on depicting microaggressions in that video. And I have one more for you to see that might make you chuckle, but it really, it isn't funny, but it may make you chuckle. Again, microaggressions.
Hi there.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, no. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean before that.
Before I was born.
Yeah, like, where are your people from?
Well, my great-grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean, but I was leaning more towards Korean.
Amazing.
Hamshasina. There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
Oh, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. Hello, Governor! What's all this then? Top of the morning to you. Let's get a small tea. Double, toil and trouble. Mind the gap! Beware Jack the Ripper! Bloody hell! Pip pip! Cheerio! I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
Really? I'm weird? Must be a Korean thing.
I love that video because, I mean, it makes you laugh, but you can see the microaggressions there. And I just think it's amazing that that these people have put together these videos that can show us how we sometimes behave. And we all are guilty of doing things like that. So I want you to hone your cultural humility skills. Once you learn what cultural humility entails, and I think that you have done so already, it is not enough for you to think about your own values, beliefs, and social position within the context of the present moment. To practice true cultural humility, you must also be aware of and sensitive to the historic realities, like legacies of violence and oppression against certain groups of people. When I developed this funnel, I didn't think about Ian Graham's knowledge to action translation model until I started thinking about how honing cultural humility practice was similar to his model. The funnel has a wide mouth that allows you to continuously engage in extensive self-reflection on a daily basis, which inspires lifelong learning. And when you align yourself with an advocacy group, such as those that will promote dismantling racism, be it systemic or individual, it guides you to always practice cultural humility. In 1976, Edward T. Hall developed the iceberg analogy of culture. And he suggested that culture was similar to an iceberg in that only approximately 10% of it is visible above the waterline. And I cannot see an iceberg without thinking of the tragedy of the Titanic. So when I see this iceberg, I just think about how if the captain of the Titanic could see below in the deep culture or in the deep sea, that he may have made some different decisions. But according to Hall, we should view culture as we do this iceberg here. And it has two components. As you can see, it has surface culture, and then it has deep culture. Well, the 10% that is the surface culture is what you can easily see, what is easily visible. But the majority of the iceberg is the 90% that lies in the deep culture, which is internal. So at the tip, again, you see behaviors that are easily observable. You can see maybe the foods that a person eat. You can smell. You can also observe sound. And it's objective knowledge, explicitly learned. But lying deep are implicitly learned, unconscious, difficult to change subject knowledge. And it's difficult to observe the deep culture of people without spending quality time with the culture. And for those of you that use social media, look at your social media accounts. If all of your friends or connections on your social media accounts look like you, then you need to spend some time in this deep part of the iceberg where you are getting to know people, you get to know their approaches to religion, their attitudes towards elders, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and the notions of the courtesy of simple things such as manners, their leadership style. But you have to delve deep into the culture in order for you to do that. And you should definitely do that with your significant others and your coworkers as well. So, according to the University of California Racial Ethnic Diversity in Long-Term Care Workforce Report, over 19 million older adults are expected to require care in a long-term care environment by 2050. The residents in those facilities are increasingly racially and ethnically diverse. The same is the case for the frontline workers in that setting, because certified nurse aides provide approximately 90% of the healthcare each day. And currently, I am a member of the Virginia Governor's Long-Term Care COVID Task Force and another work group that is tasked with increasing and diversifying the long-term care setting and the long-term care workforce. With the increasing acuity level of residents in long-term care, we should be mentoring and encouraging nurse aides who wish to pursue a nursing education, and employers actually should offer them part-time employment while they're completing the education in exchange for an agreement to work for the long-term care facility following graduation. And we also need to recognize that most of the frontline workforce is comprised of people from marginalized populations. So what extent does racial ethnic diversity vary across occupations in the long-term care workforce that you work in? And think about how that does impact care provision, because I think I've read a few different research papers that suggest that people that are cared for by people that look like them have better outcomes. And you can find this report in on the reference slide, the link to it. So what do you think about, and what do you think diversity really is? Again, I have this puzzle that's showing, and it shows some of the things that you can tell or you can see. We can sometimes see the strengths in people, and we can see their skills, and sometimes you can tell their age. But I want to tell you that most people think of diversity of identities. You know, they think about race, they think about the person's ethnicity, their nationality, their sexual orientation. And they also look at how much education you've had. And another thing is weaknesses. Most of the time, the weakness is revealed quicker than the strength. But I want you to know that skin color is the main thing that people see or think about when they think about diversity. And diversity is a lot more than that. So I would like for you to think about the diversity of your own team or your healthcare organization. What does it look like? How would your feelings and reactions change if you were a different race, gender, sexual orientation, or from a different religion than what you are? Now, that is really hard to imagine, isn't it? To be a diverse organization simply means that you have the presence of differences of identity throughout your organization. However, an organization can be diverse without being inclusive, and a company can be diverse without being equitable. So we will talk about that later. I'm not going to spend too much time talking on culturally and linguistic appropriate class of services, I'm sorry, but I will ask you, do you have class? And I invite you to and encourage all nurses to take advantage of the free training on the Think Cultural Health website. The website link can be found in the reference slide. But I do want to briefly touch on elder speak. It's a term that refers to the way that some people speak to older adults. Sometimes caregivers find themselves speaking slowly and using terms of endearment, such as the ones that you see here, as if the adult is a young child. Asking the older resident, is your tummy ready for some yummy? That can be irritating and is patronizing. It reminds me of a film that I used to show to my nurse aides. I used to teach the nurse aide program here in Virginia. And the video was called, What Do You See When You Look at Me? And it chronicled the life of this older adult. And it showed when she first was married, when she started her family, how she used to teach, and she used to travel the world. And so she constantly would ask in this video, what do you see when you look at me? I'm not this person that you see lying in this bed. I used to be someone who had a full and wonderful life. So always ask your resident how they prefer to be addressed before calling them their name. They may not want you to call them by their first name, so you would call them by the name that they prefer. And just keep in mind that your tone and behaviors may be suggesting to them, I'm in charge of you now that you're old and can't do for yourself. And this has been known to increase the challenging behaviors that we sometimes see, especially in our dementia residents. So just keep in mind that honey is something you get from bees. Sugar comes from a cane. It's great in coffee. coffee, but it's not so good when you use it to address older adults. We have discussed humility. Hopefully you have a better understanding of the significance of the practice. But what we haven't discussed is the responsibility of leaders as it applies to humility. The leader alone, the term leader, suggests that you're in charge, that you're the chief, the principal, the commander. So leaders in nursing should always be mindful of that. You are visionaries who can see when something needs improving, and you can rally others to move toward that vision. Effective leaders know to err is human. And knowing this, they are willing to admit their mistakes. I believe that this humble behavior is one of the most significant characteristics a leader can possess. It is then that nursing leaders can take responsibility for their actions. This self-awareness demonstrates trustworthiness and leader authenticity. So don't demand that employees behave in a positive manner while modeling negative behaviors. Perceived hypocrisy leads to distrust, discomfort, a lack of respect, and oftentimes turnover by your followers. Using a culturally responsive leadership framework, such as one developed by researchers in 2020, will help leaders to gain better understanding for philosophies, practices, and policies that are responsive to change. Responsive leaders consider the social, cultural aspects of an organization. They foster environments of inclusivity that facilitates distributed decision-making and within their workforce. And it mitigates gaps in service delivery that are inadequate and inequitable. Cultural responsivity refers to the ability to learn from and relate respectfully to people from your own and from other cultures. So developing a cultural responsive attitude is a lifelong journey because you must explore and be exposed to different cultures to do so. While we have made some progress over the decades, it is unfortunate that our society still judges people by the color of their skin, and our laws, systems, and cultural norms still do not allow everyone the same life chances. Nurses must take a stand. We must take a stand because this is unacceptable and we must do better. Foster an environment of inclusivity always, regardless of where you work in nursing. You should develop a DEI statement. If you are a frontline nurse, bring this to the attention of your nurse manager, your nurse leader, your director of nursing, chief nurse executive. Work with your coworkers to develop a statement. If your organization does not have a general DEI statement, encourage them to do so because stakeholder buy-in will help with sustainability. In this picture are nurse aides from when I used to teach the nurse aide program. And they wanted to do something that demonstrated the diversity that I would always talk about during training. But one day, one of the nurses came running up to me. She was very nervous. She was taking care of a patient. The patient was a Black patient, and the resident rather, asked the student to please grease her scalp. Well, the student was baffled. And she realized that she had no idea what this resident was talking about. So I took her to the side, and I explained to her that the greasing of the scalp had been passed on from generation to generation, especially in my household. You know, our elders would always ask us to do that. And I just told her that, and I talked to her about what happened with me, because you always want to be cognizant of the fact that you may be stereotyping. So I just told her that with my scalp, it's almost always extremely dry. So I must use a moisturizer. And then I thought about the fact that I better tell her that most of the time when African Americans do get a perm, it's to straighten the hair, while our white counterparts, when they do a perm, it's to curl the hair. Because I had another situation that my supervisor told me about bringing in, she was talking to one of the residents, and the resident kept crying, and she felt the resident didn't feel well. So she knew when she washed her hair that she always felt better. And it was my supervisor was from the Philippines. So she said she took the resident, and the resident was an African American woman. She took her to the bathroom, to the shower, and she washed her hair. And when the resident's daughter came in to see her, she was so angry. And what had happened was she had washed her hair, and the resident had just gotten her hair done at the beauty salon the day before. And so the administrator ended up having to pay the $50 for the hair, for her to get her hair done again. But these are things that we don't know because we don't understand about diversity and things of that nature. So collaborate with diverse individuals, because you might learn something. And always consider the strengths that another person may bring to the table. And I like this Build a Team of Rivals. I got this from Abraham Lincoln. And what Abraham Lincoln did was he built a team of people who would tell him if it was something he was doing that was wrong. He didn't just build a team of people who just would go along with anything that he said. So I like using that, build a team of rivals. So let's talk about equity. And for this discussion, I want to show you this graph here, or this picture here. And then I want to ask you, what is more important, equality or equity? So let's look at this picture and let's figure out what's wrong with this picture. So I think in this first image, it's assumed that everyone should get equal boxes here. So each person has an equal box, but is that equality or is that equity? It's definitely not equity. So in the second frame here, the person that's tall can see over this fence. So that person is standing. And the person that is medium height has a box. Now he can see over the fence. The other person required 2 boxes. So I think there that the author of this work is saying that now we can see equity. But when I show this to people, a lot of times they're saying, well, no, I don't think that it's equity, because why are the 3 people standing on the other side of the fence? So I think in this frame, when they removed the barrier, which was the fence, now they can see the game. But I still ask, is this equity? Because why aren't they inside? And this was a question that was posed to me. Why aren't they inside actually enjoying the game and not looking through a fence? And I think here, this could be because of socioeconomic status. We don't know why they're not inside looking at the game. Maybe it's like me, I couldn't get tickets to the game. So I just want you to think about that a little. And also think about the fact that these people can stand. Because suppose the person was in a wheelchair. So with this picture, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation addressed the issue of equality and versus equity. And as you can see in the top frame, everyone has the same size bicycle. But you can see that there's a person here who's in a wheelchair. And then there's a tall person, really tall. So that same equal bicycle does not work for that person. It only works for one person. And it's too tall for the shortest person. So equity is shown and demonstrated rather in this picture below, because a tall person has a bike that fits his needs. The person that was in a wheelchair is able to use a special bicycle that was made. And the short person has a bicycle that fits his needs. So I share that with you because if you want to espouse equity, you must ensure that all individuals are treated fairly and no one should be excluded. Ensuring inclusivity is extremely important. Inclusion is about folks with different identities feeling and or being valued and welcomed within a given setting, such as on your team or in your workplace. It is all about belonging. And I can appreciate a comment that a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator made. Her name is Verna Myers. And she said, diversity is being asked to the party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. And anyone who knows me knows I love to dance. So I don't want to come to the party and feel that I'm excluded and I'm standing up against the wall. Even with a diverse team, that doesn't mean that everyone is welcome or valued or that they are given the opportunity to succeed. So we need to keep that in mind. Inclusion means that all people, regardless of their abilities, disabilities, or healthcare needs, have the right to be respected and appreciated as valued members of their community and organization. I want you to again consider the CNAs who provide 90% of the care in long-term care facilities. Most of them are people of color, and as well as the people that are in food service and housekeeping. And think about the culture of the long-term care environment, which normally operates from the top down. So look at your facility or your organization and what is the experience for the individuals who are minority within the organization? And what barriers stand in the way? I want you to consider that. And because it is Black History Month, and I like to celebrate Black History Month, I will share this slide with you. It is a person who's very dear to me, Congressman John Lewis, the late Congressman John Lewis.
My philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
And I practice this all the time. I believe that all people within our healthcare organization should be celebrated and their heritage recognized, because celebrating one's heritage allows us to memorialize their special history, and it helps the people being celebrated to understand their own identity more deeply. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and I now welcome any questions.